Hey, I am here at a local reservoir. I just decided to head out here and enjoy a little bit more of this amazing weather. Actually coming off a pretty awesome weekend. I hung out with a good friend of mine. We hang out probably more and more these days, sometimes just the two of us, sometimes, a bigger group. But not only are we good friends, longtime friends, but we both own technology companies. So a lot of times what we end up doing is we'll sort of either, we'll pitch problems to each other, or we'll share ideas, or sometimes just complain, just vent. But what I've noticed over time is that we've sort of learned what each other are strong in. He happens to be very, very visionary, and there are things that I throw out to him, and he just has incredible insight in that regard. The things that he tends to throw to me a lot of times are more leadership oriented. I spent, many years as a Marine officer, and, fortunately for me, I went through one of the best leadership schools on the planet in the United States Marine Corps. A lot of formal schools, but also a lot of informal opportunity to learn and grow as a leader as well. One of the problems that he has pitched to me over the last few months is a negative culture that popped up, and it was really due to one person. He had a chief operating officer that came in. He was very divisive, very negative. My friend was undermined a lot more than he knew. He started to kind of realize this over time, and I think rightly so. One of the things I kept telling him is, you got to get rid of this guy, and he did. So this negative chief operating officer ends up leaving. But the remaining problem, and one of the things my friend was telling me this weekend, is that there were a couple of sort of holdovers. There were a couple of guys who had sided with that chief operating officer, and they have remained very negative. So there's still a little bit of a cultural problem, and it sort of centers around just a couple of people. Now, the easy answer is to get rid of those guys, or maybe even just, counsel them repeatedly and see if they're willing to change. But there's another option here, and it's something that I learned in the Marine Corps. And it was something that kind of came to me through both experience with difficult people and studying the Viet Cong in Vietnam. Now, if you know your history, we lost the war, but the United States never lost a major decisive battle in Vietnam. And the reason was because we had superior, really everything. We had superior training, we had superior weapon systems, we had air superiority throughout, and we just typically overwhelmed the enemy. Now, one of the things that the Viet Cong would do to mitigate that superiority on the battlefield was a tactic called hugging the belt. What they would do is they would fight in as close as they possibly could, so that if we were to use those weapon systems like mortar or artillery or close air support, we would put our own troops in danger. We call that in the Marine Corps, in the military, we call that danger close. So they would fight in so close to us that we would be left with nothing but, the same weapon systems they had access to. Right? Direct fire weapon systems, rifles, grenades, things like that. Now, if you take that and apply that, it was very effective, by the way. But if you take that and you apply that to leadership, there's a tendency that works the same way. When you have those problem people, one of the things I used to teach this to lieutenants, and I used to do it myself, but when you have those problem people, it is at least worth pulling them in and making them work closely with you. There's a lot of different ways to do that. You could reorganize their job, their lines of reporting. You could move offices or workspace or whatever. But the idea is to make them interact with you on a regular basis. what happens when they do that are two things. Number one, it humanizes you. So where you may have been distant and remote and just this guy that's out of touch, now you're a real person. You're a person that laughs and jokes around and, you know, has personal difficulties and challenges like everybody else. The second thing it does is it forces that person who's been doing all this negative stuff behind your back to have to look you in the eye every single day, to have to talk to you every day. And it forces them into a sort of a duplicity where they're either going to have the nerve to be nasty and divisive directly to you, which is difficult. Not everybody can do that. A lot of people can't do that. They don't want to live like that any more than you do. Or they've got to be phony and essentially live two lives, be two different people. And what you'll find is over time, if you stick that out, an awful lot of people, a large portion of those difficult personalities will stop being difficult because it just doesn't make sense to them. It's not worth the effort. And that whatever they were holding against you tends to kind of go away. It tends to work itself out and is worth a shot. Now, that doesn't mean that people just automatically, if they're doing horrible things in your business, it doesn't mean that they automatically should stay, that you should take this approach every single time. But when you look at people who were at least once a positive member of your organization, or they've got skills that are hard to replace, it's worth a shot. It is worth pulling them in close to you and making them fight in close and at least making an effort to force them out of that negative zone that they're in. Doesn't always work, but I think you'll be surprised if you give it a shot at how often it works. Think about that person in your organization that's making your life difficult and consider pulling them in and making them interact closely with you every single day. I think you'll be surprised at the results. All right, guys, if you like this video, if you think that's worth a shot, give me a thumbs up, please. Subscribe. Leave me a comment. If you disagree, agree, leave me a comment in the comment box below. I will get back to you, and we'll talk to you soon.